Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to look at the debut of Leon in the Pokemon trading card game. Now, Leon, of course, is the champion of the Pokemon League, at least at the beginning of the game, till you go and wrestle that title away from him. And we've got a supporter card here that seems kind of relevant, kind of appropriate. You see, what we do is it's a supporter card, and our translation here comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet. Now, first of all, Antoine is awesome. We are big fans. Secondly, we owe Antoine an apology here, because, of course, Antoine was our translator on the Cramorant video yesterday, and I forgot to credit them. How mean was that? Consider it fixed, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, Antoine. Now, what we actually see from Leon here is a supporter card that says, during this turn, all of your Pokemon's attacks deal 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Oh, that's good. Now, one of my mantras in the Pokemon trading card game is that extra damage is always good. And as a general rule, that holds. We saw Crobat G back in the day dropping extra damage was really cool. And we're seeing the combination recently of Galarian Zigzagoon along with Scoop Up Net being similarly good. We saw that Kingdra that dropped extra damage saw a little bit of play back in the day. We've seen that Plus Power has been kind of good for pretty much the entire time it was legal over all the various different formats. We saw that Choice Band was huge recently, and we were sad to see it go. General rule of thumb, extra damage is always good. Now, at this stage, a bunch of you are probably thinking, well, hang on a second, Wassy. Have we ever had a supporter card before that let you do extra damage? And the answer is, well, yes. Yes, we have. Now, the most recent one, and I'm going to double check this just to make sure I'm not saying anything silly, was Black Bout. Black Bout came around in Heart Gold, Soul Silver Triumphant, and if you were behind on prizes, you did 40 more damage. And the thing is that Black Bout did actually see a whole bunch of play, and on the other hand, it was really specific. So the fact of the matter is, there were a whole bunch of decks that just weren't ever going to use this. And that was kind of awkward, though the 40 extra damage was good. Now, of course, I did lie to you, there are 3 that we've had since Black Bout. The most recent one was actually Professor Kukui. Let you draw 2 cards, and then during this turn, you did an extra 20 damage. And the thing is that Kukui actually saw a little bit of play, and was a pretty good card. But it also let you draw 2 cards. The thing about something like Leon is that you're doing extra damage, but you're giving up your draw for the turn. Now, that might not matter. It may well be that you've actually got a whole bunch of stuff like Chinchino and Jirachi and things of that nature. So you're actually doing your drawing with Pokemon, and if you're drawing with Pokemon, you can use your supporters for other stuff, like doing extra damage. But the fact of the matter is, Professor Kukui, although it didn't do as much damage, was still actually really cool in that regard, drawing and dealing damage. Now, if you wanted either or, we had Giovanni's Scheme a little bit earlier than that in Breakthrough, which either let you draw until you had 4 cards in your hand, or it let you do an extra 20 damage. Now, again, we're talking 20 damage, not 30, and if you want to know what that extra 10 damage does, people play Galarian Zigzagoon. People played Plus Power. The fact of the matter is that extra 10 damage can make a huge, huge difference. And it's going to come down to matchups. Some Pokemon aren't going to need that extra 10, so it's not going to be as big a deal. But make no mistake, going from 20 to 30 on a supporter can be huge. And then before that, we had the one that really didn't see much play at all. It was Iris. And Iris really didn't see a huge amount of play. Came around in Plasma Blast, and you did 10 more damage to the active for each prize card your opponent had taken. And partly at the time we had other options for doing extra damage, and partly at the time it was just awkward. It was far too situational. It relied on how many prize cards your opponent had taken. It was kind of awkward, so yeah. But the fact of the matter is, we do have a history in the Pokemon trading card game of playing these cards that do extra damage even when they're supporters. And Black Belt wasn't a powerhouse card, but it did see a bunch of play. Giovanni's Scheme wasn't a powerhouse card, but it did see a bunch of play. Professor Kukui was not a powerhouse card, but it did see a bunch of play. Now, in terms of damage, this is better than all of them. I know Black Belt did 40, not 30, but this is anytime, not just when you're behind on prizes, so, you know, totally counts. Actually, while we're here, I might as well shout out the only other support we've ever had that did extra damage. Buck's Training was the original, and you did 10 more. But you also drew 2 cards at the same time, so it was basically just a weaker version of Professor Kukui. And in terms of pure cards, there's an argument Kukui is better, but in terms of pure damage, I do think this is the best one that we've had. Which is kind of awesome. The question then becomes, alright, well if this is a good card, if this compares favourably to all of these similar kind of cards we've had in the past, is it actually going to see play? And the answer is, it is literally all about matchups. So if we take something like Zacian, for instance. Zacian comes along and it does 230 damage. Well, is this actually going to be relevant? And the answer is, yes, it actually really is. Because Zacian generally tends to do 230. And then you might use Arcus, Dalga, and Palkia, and you go up to 260. And then you might play a Vitality Band to go up to 270. But then again, a lot of the times you want to play that new tool that gives you an extra 50 HP. Okay. Cape of Toughness. So you don't really want to use Vitality Band, but then Vitality Band puts you up to 270, which gets KOs on stuff like Reshiram and Charizard. Having said that, even after using Arcus and Alga and Palkia and Vitality Band, you're hitting 270. What about against an Arcus and Alga and Palkia? Well, now, if you've used your own one of them, so now you're hitting 260, you then play Leon, now you're up to 290, and all of a sudden you are getting a one-hit KO on ADP. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. I'm not saying that Leon is instantly going to go into every Zacian deck, but I'm saying this is one of those deck building tools. When you're making Zacian, you go, right, I want to be prepared for the mirror match. Gee whiz, I sure wish I could get a one-hit KO on an opposing ADP. Hang on a second, Leon will legitimately allow me to get a one-hit KO without having to muck around with stuff like Galarian Zigzagoon, which just gets too awkward. And this is literally where we come down. Reshiram and Charizard, similar kind of thing, except they don't tend to play ADP. So again, in a mirror match or against a Mewtwo and Mew, for instance, Vitality Band with Leon means you're hitting 270, and now you've got that one-hit KO you weren't getting before. Bearing in mind, in a mirror match, if you hit for 230, you're opening up an Outrage, which is kind of awkward. This is a matchup-based card. I don't think this is the kind of card that is just going to randomly be put as a 3 or 4 of in a whole bunch of different decks. This, to me, seems like a very specific card where you're going to be going, right, what matchups am I worried about? Will this allow me to come up against them and actually win? And if the answer's yes, you're going to play it. And if the answer's no, you're not. And it really is as simple as that. Have a look at the Pokemon you're trying to KO, have a look at the Pokemon you've got in your deck, and if you've got any Pokemon that are 20 or 30 away, because if it's only 10, you should be using Vitality Band. But if you've got any Pokemon that are 20 or 30 away from getting a KO on a Pokemon that you really want to get a KO on, Leon comes in absolutely beautifully. I'm going to go ahead and give this... I'm going to give it 4 Wassies, and that feels generous, and I'm so tempted to give it a slightly lower score. But the fact of the matter is, this is a really good card that is probably going to flip a bunch of matchups. And even if it's not played in a whole bunch of decks, I do expect to see this coming out being super relevant and flipping matchups. And I think that's a 4 Wassie card. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/TheWassie. patreon.com/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.